Okay, so let's dive into 3 stories that all happen in a place we've probably all been to 100 times without a second thought: Walmart. You know, it's this world of super bright lights and aisles that seem to go on forever. It's so familiar that it feels, well, safe. But for 3 people, that totally normal background twisted into something truly terrifying. I mean, think about it, right? We go there for everything: groceries, gadgets, socks. It's this bustling, brightly lit space that's really just designed to be completely routine. It's a constant in almost every town, you know? A symbol of just normal, everyday life. And that's exactly where these stories begin. We're gonna explore what happens when those bright lights get a little lower, the aisles empty out, and the normal, unspoken rules of a public space just kind of vanish. So, our first story is about a 20-year-old employee named Samantha. She's working the overnight stock shift, and for her, the empty store wasn't peaceful at all. It turned into a hunting ground for a guy with a really, really scary plan. What makes this so creepy is how slowly it all escalates. You know, it starts with just a simple, kind of awkward moment while she's folding jeans. But then, almost 2 hours later, she sees him again. He's just watching her from the appliance aisle. No cart, no items. He is definitely not shopping. So she realizes she's being followed and she tries to lose him. She even hides out for a bit before moving to a totally different part of the store, the dairy cooler. But that is exactly where he finds her, in a spot that is clearly marked employees only. So try to picture this. She's in this loud, cold dairy cooler, hiding behind a big box of eggs, and she thinks, okay, he must be gone by now. She finally peeks her head over the box, and he's there, standing right over her, smiling. Of course, she screams. It's that instinctive, pure terror kind of scream. Now this is where his manipulation just goes to another level. When her coworker Bob hears the scream and runs in, the guy doesn't run away. Oh no, he calmly makes up this story. He's Tom from corporate. He completely flips the script, grabs all the authority, and makes her look like the one who did something wrong. He even has the nerve to order her to get back to work before he just vanishes. And it's so convincing that her coworker buys the whole thing. Of course, the next day, the real story comes out. The manager is like, yeah, that's complete bullshit. There was no inspection, no Tom from corporate, and the security footage, it proved what Samantha already knew in her gut. This guy was a predator who had been stalking her for hours. The impact was real too. She could never bring herself to work the night shift again. So Samantha's story happened in the dead quiet of the night, right? Well, this next one starts in the middle of absolute chaos. A simple Black Friday shopping trip takes a horrifying turn, all because of the very last laptop on sale. See, inside the store, it's a public argument. It's annoying, maybe a little intimidating, but it's something you can just walk away from. There are other people around, you check out, you leave. But then, at home, your own private safe space, he's there, on your porch. And all of a sudden, that conflict isn't public anymore. It's deeply, terrifyingly personal. Inside, the family is, as you can imagine, in a total panic. The narrator's mom is already on the phone with 911. They're watching this man on their porch just pounding on the door. Then, all of a sudden, he stops, and there's this really tense silence. They're thinking, okay, maybe he's finally gone. But then, and that's the sound of the threat moving from outside to inside. He hasn't given up, he just found another way in. He smashed a window in their den, and now he is inside the house with them. This whole thing just escalated from a threat on the porch to a full-blown home invasion. Luckily, because the mom had already called 911, this thing got resolved incredibly fast. The police showed up just moments later. They found the guy hiding behind a couch and arrested him right there on the spot. And even as they were dragging him away, he was screaming threats, which pretty much confirmed he was dangerously unstable. For our last story, we're going back to the overnight shift. But this time, a stock worker starts to get this sinking feeling that he and his 2 coworkers are not the only living people inside this massive, locked-down store. The dread in this story just builds and builds through all these small, unnerving little clues. First, it's just a glimpse of someone dressed in all black. Then, a few seconds later, this impossibly loud crash as a bicycle gets shoved right off its display hook. Then he hears this strange laugh echoing through the aisles. Finally, he gets a direct look at the guy before the figure just bolts, proving someone is definitely in the store and it feels like they're playing some kind of sick game. So the narrator is, understandably shaken up. But eventually, nature calls, and he has to use the bathroom. He goes into this small, employees-only restroom in the back warehouse, a really confined space. He goes into a stall, closes the door, and that's when he hears the main bathroom door open and close. He is not alone. Someone walks right up to his stall door and presses their face so close that the crack is completely blocked, and all he can see is a single eye staring back at him. Then, the intruder starts whispering, just these unintelligible sounds echoing in that tiled room. It's this incredibly intimate and violating moment of pure terror. Thinking fast, the narrator pulls out his phone and loudly pretends to call his coworker Alvin for help. Just the sound of his voice is enough to make the intruder run. But here's the weird part. Maybe 20 or 30 seconds later, Alvin shows up for real and says he didn't see anyone. It's like the massive store with all its endless aisles just swallowed the intruder whole. And the final twist comes the next day. The manager checks the security tapes to try and find this guy, but the footage from the entire night is just static. Nothing. No break-in, no man in black, no proof. It's as if the whole thing was just erased, leaving nothing behind but the narrator's terrifying memory. So what do we take away from these 3 really different but equally scary encounters? You've got a stalker hiding in plain sight, an argument that literally follows you home, and a ghost in the machine that leaves no trace. What all these stories really show is just how fragile our sense of safety in a public place can be. For Samantha, those empty aisles became a maze with a predator at the center. For the second narrator, the store was just act 1 of a home invasion. And for the third guy, a locked building offered no protection at all. Ultimately, these stories are a pretty stark reminder that even in the most normal, everyday places, we just have to be aware of what's going on around us. It leaves you with this question that's kind of hard to shake. The next time you turn down an empty aisle, are you really alone?